Hey everybody, it's been a hell of a week, but we're here with some retro modding news. First up, Mobius Strip Tech has developed an interesting flex cable. This is for the Sega Genesis Model 1, and it's used when you lift the RGB pins on the VDP when you're doing a triple bypass. This flex cable does two things. It makes it easier to solder to the VDP because sometimes soldering wires for the RGB lines on the lift pins on the VDP is kind of difficult. So soldering those pins to this flex cable and then soldering the wires directly to these pads on the flex cable is a good idea. The second is it adds those resistors that Tianfeng recommends to add to the Model 1 triple bypass. Now, I'm not a Genesis expert, and you can read the article that Tianfeng wrote. You can tell by these color bars here that there's some colors that are the same in the middle of the bars here. Adding those resistors to the Model 1 will fix that. Mobius has released these OshPark files, so you can just order these yourself and add it to your own console. He also made this other little board that makes it easier to solder the new mini DIN in place of the RF modulator on the Model 1. So I'm not exactly sure how this solders in, but it prevents you from having to scrape the solder mask on a Model 1 in order to solder that mini DIN in. With both of these new mods, I might have to revisit my Model 1 guide just to make it easier for anyone going forward. Next, we have a couple of updates from Woozle's Consolizers. So here is a picture of the Neo Geo Pocket Color. He's getting those flex cables in for both the Neo Geo and the Game Boy Advance SP. Speaking of Game Boy Advance SP, Greg Collins from Laser Bear has announced that he is working on the case for the Game Boy SP Consolizer. He says he's shooting for a really small form factor, and compared to my GBA HD, I can only imagine that thing is going to be really small compared to the normal Consolizer. So I'm super excited to do both of these new Consolizers. I love Woozle and PixelFX's work, and I can't wait to get my hands on them. Next up, we have a Mike Chi kind of troll update. He keeps telling us not to bug him about these menu updates, but then he shows us these menu updates. So every time he posts one, I'm like, this is awesome. Come on, Mike, you can't have us both being excited and not excited. This is footage of the RetroTink 5X. It looks like you can change the output resolution without having to go around that menu. I think this is really neat. Instead of having to just go cycle through all the different settings, you could just choose the setting that you want. More exciting Woozle news, but actually not about consolizers. This time it's with the FX Digital FPGA kind of platform that they talked about in Bob's video a couple of weeks ago. It seems like Woozle has gotten the percentage of the FPGA that's being utilized by their platform down to just 45%. It sounds like this was about a 10% reduction. The lower the percentage that they use, that means the more features that they can add on top of it. Now this is great because they'll be able to add more features onto their platform, such as filters, different scanline options, and who knows. I find it really awesome how transparent these guys are about their progress. As someone who wants to learn more about electrical engineering and just FPGA design and almost everything to do with our hobby, it's really cool that these guys are telling us what's going on with their products and sharing these little tidbits. And lastly, I want to talk about my trip to RetroWorldExpo and show you guys what I bought. The whole expo was really awesome. I spent most of my time walking around, looking at all the different vendors, trying to film them too, because it's kind of hard if you've never been to one of these sort of expos before. It's hard to know what type of things are there. So I kind of tried to put it through the eyes of somebody who's never been to one of these expos, walked around and took video of all the different vendors. But I have to be honest, the real reason that I went there is to meet some of my YouTube heroes. Bob, the guys from My Life in Gaming. Metal Jesus was there, but he's not exactly in our niche retro console modding sort of hobby. But I totally blew it talking to those guys. I was so focused on working on the video. I was walking around with my camera and I didn't want to put it into those guys' face. It's very weird, you know, I know the types of things that the YouTube algorithm is expecting. You know, I should shove my camera into Metal Jesus' face and that would get tons of clicks and likes by everybody, but that's not what I wanted to do. I just kind of wanted to make my own video about what it's like to actually be there as a fan and as somebody who is part of the retro community. So I sacrificed talking to those guys because they only had a limited amount of time and there was a bunch of things that I wanted to look at the expo. Not to mention the fact that it's hilariously hard to talk to people that you have watched on the internet for years and then you're meeting them for the first time. The first thing I said when I saw Metal Jesus was like, "Hi, big fan," and then I walked away. So if any of you YouTube guys are watching, I want to apologize if I kind of fell out of it. It's definitely hard when you have a ton of things that you want to say, but in the moment, you really don't have anything to say. I did actually manage to get them all to sign my RetroTink 5X, which is pretty cool. Look how huge Metal Jesus' signature is, but there's Bob from Retro RGB, Metal Jesus, and Try and Corey from My Life in Gaming. Oh, and Norm from Gaming Historian signed it on the bottom. So this is a pretty cool piece of retro memorabilia. I don't think I'm ever going to sell this thing. I haven't sold any of my other ones, my OSSC or my other RetroTink. So this is really unique, and every time I see this thing, I'm going to think about the event and those guys. All right, let's actually talk about what I bought. The first thing that I bought is kind of sad. I want to talk about the sad state of Game Boy Advance SP buying in 2021. Absolutely ridiculous. This piece of garbage that's like all scratched up, doesn't have a battery cover in the back. This was $55. I kind of haggled because I didn't need the cover in the back and I don't need the AC adapter. So I said I'll take $55. But the going price was anywhere between $75 and higher for just bare run-of-the-mill sort of Game Boy Advance SPs. So this makes me really sad. However, I did find this cool $1 bin that had a whole bunch of kind of like clone consoles and just aftermarket controllers and things. But it did have not just one, but 2 Game Gears, and these were $1 each. So these are gonna be for some future, maybe Ben screen mods or something. So maybe a Consolizer if it ever comes out. It's cool that I was able to get a really good deal on these two. I'm not even sure if they work. They might be busted, but that's okay, we can work on that. Next, I bought a Wii U Pro Controller. I just know that these are hard to find, and this was relatively inexpensive at $30. So I had to buy this because just sooner or later, these are gonna be just hard to find. And I don't actually mind this shape. It kind of does remind me of the Switch Pro Controller, but it's one of the better Nintendo sort of official controllers, the later controllers. And last but not least, I was able to get I think a decent deal on a new Nintendo 3DS XL. I've been wanting to get one of these for a while, and I'm kicking myself because they used to cost $200 new, maybe a year and a half ago, but ever since then it's been like $300 for a used one. So I got this one for $150, and I think that's a pretty good deal. I'm going to be putting an optimized 3DS capture mod into this, so that video should be coming sometime soon. And those are my pickups from Retro World 2021. If you haven't watched my Retro World video yet, go check it out. It's only about 8 minutes, and it just goes over in general what that expo is all about. That's it for this week. Follow me on Twitter or join the Discord if you want to suggest a news story to me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.